Hi, I'm Michelle Rupp, host of AFMC TV. Thank you for joining us. AFMC TV is a place to consider as a healthcare hub. AFMC is a healthcare nonprofit. We specialize in making our lives, businesses, and communities healthy. This space was created to share information with the community. You'll hear from healthcare experts on a broad range of topics. Medical topics like immunizations and telehealth, to lifestyle topics like strengthening a routine or keeping your family hydrated. Our promise to you is to keep you informed in a digital way, providing useful information to you and your family. Again, thank you for joining us and welcome to AFMC TV. About the vaccine. In the next hour, we will look at
a very hard thing.
This video will provide ideas
And also make sure
Welcome and thank you for joining us to AFMC TV. Joining me this morning is our president and CEO, Mr. Ray Hanley. Thank you for joining us on our first episode.
Thank you for having me, Michelle.
Ray, you have spent an enormous amount of time in the healthcare industry, in the healthcare realm. Yes. You've got quite a bit of longevity there. Let's talk about some of the changes, good and bad, that you've witnessed during your tenure. We've come a long way.
We have, and I started, in Medicaid in 1986, when Medicaid was a small program, only covered the poorest of the poor. We had far too many people without coverage. I spent, 15 years with 3 governors working to expand coverage. And if you look at Medicaid today, from the small program that I started with in 1986, it's the largest insurance program in the state, bar none. Hopefully with AFMC's help, I think it's a good program. It's doing a lot of good. And I'm really proud to have been involved in this for a long time. Let's
talk just briefly about AFMC's role in the healthcare industry.
AFMC, started in 1972 just as a Medicare quality improvement organization. When I was the Medicaid director and needed help with Medicaid, I reached out to AFMC, brought them in to do utilization review to help us determine what was medically necessary and not, to do provider relations to try to help the provider community with their issues, which made them more receptive to seeing our patients. Got Medicaid into the transportation business, AFMC, to monitor that, and transportation in a rural health situation like Arkansas is really critical. We oversee that today, 2 million trips a year. We're out there doing the provider relations work with the medical community, both on the policy side, the billing side, and our job has been to work with the medical community so they are receptive to seeing these patients. And I think we've done a good job.
I was going to say, and being very successful at it, for sure. So I'm going to ask you to look into your crystal ball and predict the future. What does healthcare look like in the next 3 years? What does it look like in the next 5 years?
What it's got to look like is more people covered. This country still has 30 to 40 million people with no coverage, which is unacceptable, and we have to all work together to expand coverage, to get people into systems they're already eligible for and don't know it, through the federal exchange. We have to help areas that lack access to healthy foods, the food deserts. We need to identify those and work with those. We've got to work hard to improve the health status of children, because if you look at the recent Kids Count report, we don't fare well with the health status and the economic well-being of children in the state. And there's a lot of work, I think, that needs to be done there.
Good deal. I think so too. If you've got a moment, I'm going to ask you to stick around. We're going to bring in Roby Brock here in just a minute, and we're going to continue a little more on this conversation about healthcare, the healthcare industry, and how it's boomed over the last 10, 20 years. Roby Brock of Talk Business and Politics joins us now. We've added you in to the mix here to continue our conversation on healthcare.
I'm always happy to be added in to anything,
Yes.
so thank you.
Yes, we will add a dash of your health industry knowledge into this mix. Ray and I were talking earlier just about the healthcare landscape and how it's changed over the years. And the healthcare industry really is one of the top industries now. Maybe it's always been one of the top industries, but I feel like it's even more so now.
I think it's more important now to community survival. I think it's always been a very important cog in the economic wheel of most communities. But if you look at if you go to any county in the state of Arkansas, any major city, you're going to find one of the top 3 employers in that city or that county is going to be a hospital. And you can just look at some of the big cities.
Or a nursing home, and the counties that don't have hospitals, a nursing home is often the largest
something
employer.
in the healthcare sector is going to be driving the economy in that region. And so, just statistically, when you look at it, depending on how you slice and dice your categories, you could have anywhere from about 130,000 to 200,000 Arkansans are employed in the healthcare industry. That's a huge number of people. That's almost 11% of the workforce, maybe even a little bit higher than that.
Well, the overall impact that healthcare has had in recent years, I almost feel like kind of taking an elevated look at it. Of course, with the pandemic, things were accelerated. But I feel like there's been an acceleration of healthcare, what it brings to the table, the embracing of new technologies, that we're just seeing things that even our parents can't imagine that they are seeing in their lifetime. You're probably some days might wonder, I can't believe we're seeing this in my lifetime.
I talked to a psychiatrist just about 2 weeks ago who is going to be leaving his full-time job as an in-person psychiatrist to just do telemedicine full-time, and he will make the same amount of money basically working from his house at a computer with a t-shirt and shorts on. I mean, you get into the different lifestyles that people want to have in the way that they work, and you're going to see a lot more diversity, I think, in healthcare. And that it's not going to replace in-person visits, but it is going to be another dimension.
And people like him, psychiatry, mental health, when South Arkansas pretty much has no psychiatrist, and a real shortage of mental health providers in rural Arkansas. And people like that, psychiatrists you talk about, and other mental health professionals, if we can build out broadband, which again wraps into business and healthcare, you have a chance to deliver some of these services to rural Arkansas, which is exciting and probably the only way some people are going to be able to access specialty
I'd say
care.
this to cap it off here. As much as we've watched over the last 3 decades from my perspective in healthcare and business and politics in that intertwining that we're talking about, it's not going away in the next 30 years. I mean, it will be front and center. It will be a major economic engine. It will be a major political driver of conversation.
Absolutely.
And there's a little bit of excitement to see where it goes from here. I mean, honestly, who would have thought that, like your psychiatrist friend, he would be seeing patients from the comfort of his own home? Who would have thought during this pandemic we'd be working from the comforts of our own home, where you only need to be professional from the waist up because that's all anyone sees? I mean, everything has changed so dramatically and so at such a rapid pace that we probably can't even fathom the changes that are on the horizon.
We've had, AFMC's had as many as 700 employees this past year working remotely. Our call center, all our COVID workers, contact tracing and everything. And, it all worked because of really good technology.
Well, it's a conversation we will continue to have, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. Well, Roby, thank you for taking time and coming in and joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Joining us this morning. And when we come back, still sticking with healthcare, but this time we're going to talk about how you can protect your skin. We'll be right back.
So it is summertime, and we're all going to be spending a lot more time out in the sun, in the direct sun and in the heat. So sunscreen becomes real important for all of us, children and adults, to use when we're out in the sun. It's not an excuse to stay out in the sun just freely. It's mostly just to add some added layers of protection. Sunscreen itself either absorbs the sun or reflects the rays that cause damage to the skin that cause sunburn. So it's real important that you use a sunscreen with an SPF of 30 or greater. That's great, provides you the greatest protection. What I usually tell people is you need to use at least about a shot glass worth of sunscreen to cover your entire body. What I usually tell people to do before you get dressed to go out, if you're going to be out at the pool or wherever, go ahead and apply all that sunscreen before you get dressed to go out. Let it dry before you swim, and just be sure to reapply consistently after swimming or after being out an extended amount of time.
Joining me now is Jamie Mayo. Jamie, thanks so much for coming in. We are going to talk about how do you know when you're hydrated?
That's a great question. It's really, really important right now, of course, as we're in the summer. Most people, they think they're drinking enough. They say, well, I'm drinking water all day, or I'm drinking, I call it sugar water. So it's Gatorade, Powerade, Squencher. So to know what to drink and then when to drink it, and then if you're having enough, is a great question. So how do you know? So I use a couple of tools to do that. One is we weigh. So if we're out, whether we're working or we're exercising, we're in the yard, we weigh. And then when we come back in, we weigh again. And so the number of pounds we lose, we drink 2 to 3 cups of water per pound. So if I lost 3 pounds, I would have 6 to 9 cups of water or fluid to replenish that. Another way, and it sounds kind of yucky, is your urine. Is to look and sometimes smell. I call it stinky pee, for lack of a pretty term. But urine has different colors, and those different colors signify some things that are going on in the body.
Okay.
And so the darker the urine, the more concentrated it is, the more dehydrated you are. So to make sure that you're really giving your body what it needs, of course, to make sure that the color of your urine is more, I like lemonade. Clear means you've really, really diluted it, and you'll lose a lot of electrolytes that way. So if you can have kind of a lemonade color, that's really the best. When you look at orange juice and like cola, that's a no-go.
Yeah, I would suspect at that point, there's some damage perhaps, potentially, being done there.
Sure. Your kidneys, they're working hard. They're working way too hard. So we really want to keep it down on the clear to the lemonade color. And there's one last way we like to use, and it's when you can take your skin and you can pinch it. Okay. And if it stays tinted or pinched, at the top, if it stays there, then you don't have enough fluid.
So if it bounces back,
you're good.
Well,
you're good.
I don't have to drink water anymore today.
You're done.
I must be there.
That's right. So those are some tips that you can use when you're out to know that if you're hydrated or not.
That's really good. And I guess that's universal. I mean, can you take those same tips and apply them to smaller kids, young children?
Absolutely. And we talk about it in the summer because that's when we're most familiar, but even in the colder months, you forget to drink because you don't feel like you're sweating as much. So that's why the color of the urine and then the pinching the skin are great, again, tools to use any time of the year.
Because sometimes I just get tired of drinking water. Can I eat watermelon? Can I eat cucumber? I mean, what's some of the food that would still be hydrating that I could maybe get some of those benefits without just constantly glass after glass after glass?
Right. Now, another great question. Any of your fruits are going to be great options, especially if water is in the word, as in watermelon. Melons are always perfect. Honeydew, cantaloupe, watermelon. Your berries are really good. Strawberries, blueberries, cherries. I love a good peach or a plum. So if there is juice running down my arm, dripping off my elbow, then I know that is a great fruit or a vegetable to use.
Okay, well, that's great. Jamie, this is all very, very fascinating information and stuff we need to know. Too. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Pleasure's mine. If
you will stick around, I do want to talk, you talked a little bit about packing food for when you go to the lake and whatnot. you might have some tips that you can offer us if we come back from the lake and maybe the back's a little sore or the hamstring is a little irritated. Sure. So if you can stick around, we'll talk about that right after this.
It's summertime and a lot of us are headed to the lake, and so there's a lot of precautions to take when going to the lake. We don't drive a boat every day. We often drive a car. We don't equate the fact that there's dangers to driving a boat just like there are to driving a car. Boating safety classes are always available, and especially when you're learning how to drive a boat. But the number one thing when you're out on the lake is make sure that everybody has a life jacket and they have a life jacket that fits them. The second thing is you want to be prepared with an emergency kit, just a first aid kit, for bumps, bruises, small cuts, if small things happen. But they do make a lot of boating emergency kits that had things like flags that if you're having an issue on your boat or having an emergency on the boat, you can raise that flag and other boaters can see and come to your help. But we often, when we are in an emergency state, when we're driving our car or around town, we all depend on our phone and calling 911. And you can use 911 in a boating emergency, but it's good to have a good marine radio on board, and you can actually have the Coast Guard come, and they can usually get to you quicker and assist more quickly. So it's not a bad idea to have a marine radio on board. You can actually call Mayday, Mayday, and they will come to your help.
Jamie Mayo's back with us, and we were just starting, of course, we just heard about boating and if you get into trouble out on the lake, but kind of along those same lines, you may not get into boating trouble such as an accident or anything, but if you're out skiing and you really shouldn't be skiing because you've never skied before, you might feel it the next day. What are some of those injuries that we, whether it's a pull or a strain, we might feel in our back or in our hamstring or in our calf or something because, we're all still 16, aren't we?
I am. My brain says I am, but my body says you're not.
You're right.
That's a whole other bag of issues. So those are some good questions. Very common to be out on the water, whether it's kayaking or canoeing or boating. And a lot of people, again, like to, their minds tell them that they can, but their body says something a little bit different. They know the next day. So a couple of things I would recommend is there's kind of two ways to go.
Okay.
One is muscular. So you're sore, it aches, you're uncomfortable. So you're going to do things that you've heard to do, which would be to rest, probably start off with some ice. I would take an NSAID, so ibuprofen, maybe Aleve. Tylenol is good for discomfort. But then there comes a point when you ask yourself, okay, this has been several days and it's really not getting better. How do I know, is this something I've really, it's really an injury and I need to have it seen about? That would be the case. If you've gone several days and it's not improving or it's getting worse, then I think that's the time that is appropriate to go see your doctor and share with them what you did, what you've done to take care of yourself. I've tried to rest, maybe I've done some gentle stretching, I've tried some over-the-counter medicine and I'm not getting any relief. Now I'm here to see if there is some further exams that I need to have done.
What are some of the smart things we can do before we find ourselves on the other side of pain?
That's a great question. So one is to prevent it. Prevent it means making good decisions. So if those good decisions didn't happen, then again, you're trying to get ahead of it. So you're going to be uncomfortable. When you come in, maybe you take a warm bath. That kind of helps calm the muscles. Then again, you can stretch. And then if you need an ice pack after that, then I would certainly recommend it.
Jamie, how can we play on the water and not hurt ourselves?
Michelle, you were asking some great questions today. You need to be doing like a boating safety class. Some things I would recommend, first, and it sounds really easy, is wear sunscreen. Because if you're out there all day and you get burned, then you really have a hard time in the evening. You're uncomfortable. So if you're camping, you're miserable. So you really don't get to enjoy that time with your friends. Maybe you want to be hiking and you can't move. So I would certainly recommend sunscreen. Two is to make good decisions about the beverages that you consume. Because bad things can happen when you are overserved perhaps.
Yes.
And then probably just being aware, maybe wearing a life jacket. People forget that having one in your boat, your kayak, your canoe is one thing, but actually wearing it can really make a situation turn bad, and then you end up wrenching your back to help someone or pulling a hamstring. So I would say wear sunscreen, make good decisions with the beverages you consume, and always wear a life jacket.
Jamie, you make a good point. You were talking about if you're camping, and I know a lot of families like to boat and then maybe tie off and go spend the night on the lake. Yeah. What are some things we need to know if that is going to be in our future, that we'll be camping or hiking in some capacity?
Sure. I would always recommend a first aid kit. That's easy to do, quick to put together, inexpensive, but really important to have. And I would also say just be aware of your surroundings. So are there an area known for ticks, chiggers, snakes, bears, whatever you're going to encounter. This is Arkansas. But I would certainly be aware of that. And then when you come back in, is to have someone do a quick exam. Ticks is just really important to make sure, because once they latch on, it can really cause some health problems down the line. So just a first aid kit and then a quick exam when you get back.
Okay. Jamie, anything else that we need to know before we head out this weekend?
I would just always say, stay safe and have fun. Go enjoy this beautiful state. And we've got some amazing resources. Take advantage of them.
All right. Jamie, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining our first episode of AFMC TV. Next week, we will actually be keeping with our summer theme, we'll be talking about hydration and how to keep you and your family safe. We'll see you next Wednesday.